The garage keypad blinked red like a quiet verdict. 12 years of muscle memory wrong. I tried again, slower. Wrong. The deadbolt clicked with a confidence that didn't belong to me. Kaylee's voice slid through the chain crack. New safety protocol, Lillian. We'll get you situated after paperwork. The chain slid back. The bolt fell. A text from Brandon landed before the echo died. It's only paper. I'm handling it. I drove to the library because libraries hold two things I trust: light and rules. I opened a black marbled composition book and wrote the title a teacher would approve: Ledger, January 11th, 2025. Under it, 2 lines like bones: standard, clear and convincing. Remedy, least restrictive alternative. I drew a grid for exhibits A, I. Not trophies, rails. Then I went to the Monroe County Clerk portal and typed my address. The quitclaim deed surfaced with the chill of X-ray film: 2 weeks pre-hospice, $1 consideration, a shipping store notary stamp I recognized, and no signature line for me. I printed the image for now and marked Exhibit B, deed copy, file stamp requested. The full certified mail ritual would come. I didn't need to narrate my trips to a copier for the story to be true. I called Monroe First Credit Union. This is Alicia, the manager said. I asked for a dated note confirming whether 2 late November withdrawals were done in person and for what declared purpose. I can prepare a manager's note stating in person, household accessibility improvements, she said carefully. Amounts only in branch with ID. That was enough for the rail. Exhibit D, CU manager's note, dated. The pharmacy tech lowered her voice when I asked about a refill near Christmas. We can't name who picked up, but our pharmacist can add a counseling addendum noting a third-party pickup after a dosage change. She sounded apologetic about rules and grateful for them. Exhibit G, pharmacy counseling addendum. I filed an APS intake. Do you believe there's undue influence? The caseworker asked. I believe someone used safety to change locks and called my home only paper, I said. We'll do a home visit, she said. Likely a closure letter if there's no emergency. That letter can be useful documentation. I texted Brandon and Kaylee a 1-page boundaries protocol, V1, and a short proposal for a neutral independent fiduciary, someone to hold calendars, receipts, and keys in the interim. This is the least restrictive alternative to guardianship or court, I wrote. Exhibit C, fiduciary proposal, email plus certified. Exhibit I, boundaries protocol, V1. Brandon did not reply. Silence can be strategy or panic. With Brandon, it's usually both. He does not twirl mustaches. He alphabetizes spices. He color-codes spreadsheets. The month before hospice, he sat at our table with a laptop glow on his face and tried to comfort his father with a Gantt chart. We'll keep you safe, Dad, he said, tapping boxes that marched like small, brave soldiers. When fear arrives, Brandon reaches for control like a handle. Safety is his favorite synonym for power. At noon the next day, APS arrived in a navy parka, badge-catching winter light. The worker went inside while I stayed on the sidewalk. When she returned, she was professional calm. Restricted access was described as temporary hospice safety, she said. No immediate danger observed. We'll issue closure, no services. That's not a finding on title. I understand, I said. APS brackets harm. It doesn't heal betrayal. Exhibit F, APS intake plus home visit, closure pending. At the surrogate's court, a clerk pointed me to forms. I drafted a short request to preserve my life estate rights pending review and added a note to seek a brief capacity statement from Howard's oncologist about mid-December. Paper can be bridge or trap. I would make mine a bridge. Back at Dot's condo, I laid out the rails. Exhibit A, call logs and screenshots, texts, emails, tracking. Exhibit B, deed copy with file stamp request to the clerk. Exhibit C, fiduciary proposal, email plus certified. Exhibit D, CU manager's note, dated summary. Exhibit E, timeline notes plus code notice photo, a yellow tag on the gas meter, routine inspection, contact for access. Exhibit F, APS intake / home visit / closure pending. Exhibit G, pharmacy addendum, third-party pickup after dose change. Exhibit H, notary / trust checks, commission number, Journal entry request. Compliance with New York Executive Law Section 135. Exhibit I, Boundaries Protocol, V1, Keys, Calendar, Receipts, Mediation before court. I trimmed the rituals around postage and printers. The weight lived in the artifacts, not the errands. By midweek, the credit union handed me Alicia's note, dated, stamped. She adjusted her glasses as if to make room for kindness. I know grief when it walks in with a folder, she said. Grief needs lists, I said. Otherwise it thinks it's the ocean. Mrs. Alvarez next door signed a brief declaration. In December, she saw a young woman, not me, carry a box labeled Trust Docs inside. Her hand shook at the beginning, then steadied. Truth often does. That night, I opened the county clerk portal again and noticed the link I'd missed, notarial acknowledgement. The commission number would expire February 2025. A footnote, maybe nothing, maybe a thread. Exhibit H received a new line. Request notary journal entry for date, time, ID used, any observation of capacity. I wrote to Brandon as if language could lower heat. Pick one of 3 neutrals to act as independent fiduciary. They hold receipts and keys while we sort the title. It's the least restrictive alternative. If you decline by Friday 5 p.m., I'll ask the court to preserve my life estate. That process turns on clear and convincing evidence. I prefer facts to feelings. 2 blue checks. No reply. The next morning, a code and compliance sedan idled at the curb. The officer knocked, polite, with that municipal tiredness that comes from mediating other people's wars. Routine inspection, he said. He glanced at my door, at the keypad, at my hands. We'll need interior access next week. He left a notice that looked like a yellow post-it pretending to be law. I photographed it. Exhibit E was a little heavier now. At noon, Brandon finally answered, with movement, not words. I heard tires squeak on the snow and looked up to see his SUV pull in behind my car. He stepped out in work clothes, project manager casual, and waved a man forward carrying a small toolbox. The man's jacket read Parsons Locksmith. I stepped onto the sidewalk. You're changing the locks again? I asked. Brandon's jaw worked the way it does when he's trying to keep a presentation on time. We're standardizing access, he said. Liability. Dad would want. He stopped, feeling the flinch in the air when he says Dad would want like a key phrase that still opens doors. Standardize this, I said, holding up the boundaries protocol. 48 hours notice for code changes. Physical key retained. Mediation before court. Or pick a neutral fiduciary and let someone without our blood hold the calendar. Kaylee stood in the doorway, arms crossed like she was hugging herself. She looked smaller than her confidence. A stranger won't run our family, she said, but her voice had lost a little chrome. Brandon exhaled. This isn't about you, Lillian. It's about everything. He gestured vaguely at the house, the sky, winter. He does this when he's close to truth. He almost said, it's about fear. Instead, he said, I have counsel. He nodded at the locksmith. Go ahead. Sir, the locksmith asked, eyes on me. Who's the titled owner? Me, I said, and held up the clerk printout and my driver's license like a small, defiant museum exhibit. And the trust you're relying on is currently under dispute. The locksmith stepped back. Competent people hate gray zones. I'll wait in the truck, he said. Brandon, I said, softening, because truth without dignity is just a win. You're afraid of chaos. I know. I've seen you alphabetize Christmas. But control is not the same as care. A neutral fiduciary holds the planks while we argue on the shore. That's what least restrictive means. It's structure, not siege. He looked at the house and blinked hard. When he started forgetting words, he said, I felt like I was the only adult left in the building. He laughed without humor. Kaylee says I'm dramatic. But Dad looked at me like I knew what to do. You did what frightened children do, I said. You built a fort. But you built it across my doorway. He stared at the snow, then at his phone. A notification popped. His face changed relief or fuel, I couldn't tell. My lawyer emailed, he said, as if confession could clear him. We're filing an order to show cause for temporary guardianship over property decisions. Friday, 9 a.m. He swallowed. The judge can decide if you stay while we stabilize. It's just until things settle. Kaylee looked surprised. Maybe the plan outran her. The locksmith looked at the truck again. The air tasted like a battery. I felt the first flare of rage and counted backwards by sevens. When I reached 77, I'd found the plank I needed. Guardianship is for incapacitated people, I said. Howard is gone. I am here. You don't need to seize my life to manage a spreadsheet. Brandon's phone buzzed again. He held it as if it were giving him spine. The petition argues risk, he said. Complex accounts, confused ownership, potential waste. It's not personal. It's only paper, I said, and saw him hear himself. He almost smiled at that, almost. Brandon, your petition will require clear and convincing evidence that less is not enough. I've proposed less. A neutral. A protocol. That's the map. He pocketed the phone and finally looked at me, not at the problem shaped like me. If you're right, he said, a judge will tell me so. If I'm right, I said, you could just listen. The APS car turned the corner then, slow, like a witness arriving late. The worker stepped out with a manila envelope. MS. Hart, she called, we're mailing this, but I wanted you to have a copy now. Closure, no services. No immediate safety risk found. Brandon took a step back, recalculating. Paper can unspool a plan. That's only APS, he said quickly, to Kaylee or to himself. It's not about title. Correct, I said. But it says nobody needs emergency control over me or this house. I held the envelope like a lantern. We can choose structure instead of siege. Kaylee's voice softened a half-step. Bran, the inspection is next week. If we fight with the city watching, they'll cite everything. She looked at me. We didn't mean to lock you out forever. Her voice trailed, searching for a word bigger than cleanup and smaller than coup. Brandon stared at the snowbank until the white blurred. Then he nodded to the locksmith. Stand down, he said. The locksmith tipped his cap and retreated to the truck like a professional exiting a bad scene. Brandon typed quickly and then held the screen toward me, as if the phone could be neutral. A PDF preview of the petition. Hearing time Friday 9 a.m. Captions neat, words sharp. At the bottom, a line that would echo, pending hearing, we request exclusive control of premises to prevent waste. He met my eyes with something between apology and dare. The court will sort it, he said. By Friday, someone smarter than us will decide. I felt the ledger's weight inside my tote. I were no longer letters, they were ribs. Behind Brandon, my kitchen light turned on and off as if a hand tested a switch. The house looked like a photograph of itself again, accurate, distant. I pictured Dot's phrase, they aim for the whole house when they claim they're just checking a window. I slid the APS closure into my folder beside the CU note and the pharmacy addendum. I could feel the rails align under my feet. Friday is fine, I said. Bring your boxes. I'll bring my bridge. Brandon nodded once, then turned to go. Kaylee lingered a breath longer, as if she wanted to hand me a sentence and couldn't find one that wouldn't explode. She closed the door gently. On the porch, taped slightly askew, a fresh envelope waited, certified mail green over white. I peeled it free with mittened fingers, and my name appeared in bold above a salutation that made the ground tilt. From Hart Family Trust, temporary, managing trustee Brandon Hart, notice of access standardization. I looked up. Snow had begun again, fine as pencil dust. The keypad light blinked red, steady, patient. The house held its breath. The certified envelope sat on Dot's kitchen table like a sealed verdict. Its green sticker glowed against the wood grain, daring me to open it. I left it there all evening, circling it as if it were a mousetrap. Only when the morning sun struck it like a spotlight did I slit it open. The pages inside were crisp, impersonal. Notice of access standardization, Hart Family Trust, temporary, electronic code to remain under trustee control. Physical keys to be surrendered by all parties. Communication through trustee email only. All maintenance requests logged to Brandon Hart, managing trustee. Signed, Brandon Hart. It read less like a family memo and more like a corporate edict. The word standardization felt surgical, designed to make exclusion sound efficient. Dot leaned over my shoulder. Trustee email? She scoffed. He's treating you like an employee filing tickets. I placed the notice in my ledger under Exhibit B, certified mail. I listed envelope, postmark, timestamp, contents. Writing it down steadied me, but the steadiness was brittle, like glass. That morning I drove through slush to Attorney Samuel Rowe's office downtown. The waiting room smelled faintly of polish and dust. A woman behind the counter gave me the kind of sympathetic look reserved for widows, parents of teenagers, and people carrying folders too full for comfort. Rowe's office had thick curtains and a clock that ticked just a beat too loud. He gestured for me to sit, and I spread my exhibits across his desk like tarot cards. They filed a petition for temporary guardianship over property decisions, he said, sliding the deed copy closer to himself. Friday, 9 a.m., Monroe Supreme. The word guardianship rattled me. Over me? I've paid every bill. I've got the binder, the ledger. They'll argue incapacity, risk of waste, confusion in ownership. Judges hear these cases weekly. He tapped my ledger. But the standard is clear and convincing evidence. You're not resisting structure. You've offered the least restrictive alternative, neutral fiduciary, protocols. That matters. Hearing him say it aloud steadied me. My obsession was now evidence. 2 days before the hearing, Brandon came by. His SUV idled in the driveway, exhaust puffing in steady clouds. He didn't step onto the porch, as if the boards might reject him. I wanted to say this without lawyers, he began. His voice had that practiced evenness of a man holding back anger. I don't want a war. But if you keep resisting, it'll look like instability. Dad trusted me to manage. I can't let things slip. His face was pale, his hands twitching in his coat pockets. For a moment, grief softened him. He was Howard's boy again, lost in a storm. You're afraid of drift, I said gently. So you build forts. But forts block doors. He rubbed his forehead. Kaylee says I'm pushing too hard. But if the city finds a violation or taxes fall behind, they already inspected, I interrupted. Routine visit. Logged in Exhibit E. His eyes widened. He hadn't known. You kept that. I keep everything. That's how stability is built. He shook his head. Neutrals don't love Dad. I did. His voice cracked on the word love. He turned back to his SUV, retreating under the weight of his own certainty. I logged the encounter. Exhibit A, Brandon visit. Refusal of fiduciary. Admission of fear. That Thursday, code and compliance returned. 2 officers with flashlights moved through the property like polite intruders. Kaylee followed, chattering nervously about safety protocols and temporary measures. After half an hour, one officer handed me a yellow slip, preliminary notice, potential violations, access pathways, heating system inspection overdue. Kaylee's cheeks flushed with triumph. See? This is what I mean. Without order, this place will crumble. I refinanced the furnace 3 years ago, I replied evenly. The logs are in the binder. Her smile faltered. She didn't know about the binder, Howard's meticulous legacy. I logged it, Exhibit E maintenance logs binder. That night, Dot and I sat at her kitchen table. She brewed tea dark as iron and read aloud from Brandon's petition on her tablet. The words repeated, incapacity, confusion, risk of waste. Do they really believe this? She asked. They believe paper says whatever it's stamped to say, I said. Then make your paper louder. So I drafted witness statements. Mrs. Alvarez, neighbor, who had seen the trust docs box. Alicia, the credit union manager. The pharmacist, who noted the third-party pickup. Each would anchor one exhibit. I updated the fiduciary proposal, listing 3 neutral professionals. Exhibit C, updated fiduciary proposal. At midnight, Brandon replied to my email, we will not consent to strangers controlling family assets. I screenshotted it. Exhibit A, fiduciary refusal, timestamped. Friday approached like a blade. Friday dawned gray and sharp, the kind of winter morning when the sky feels like sheet metal. I dressed carefully, navy wool skirt, cardigan, boots that could grip courthouse steps slicked with salt. I slipped the ledger into my tote like a shield. Dot insisted on driving. They'll try to rattle you. Keep your notes in front of you. Don't let silence scare you. The courthouse lobby smelled of radiator heat and wet coats. Lawyers moved in purposeful flocks, coats dark, shoes polished. The buzz of their clipped voices made me feel like an intruder in my own story. Brandon stood near the benches, pacing, phone in hand. Kaylee sat stiff, her face pale under heavy makeup. For a second, Brandon looked up and I saw his grief raw, uncovered. Then his lawyer arrived, a man in a tailored coat with eyes like polished stone, and the mask returned. Inside the courtroom, the judge adjusted her glasses. Her hair was silver, her eyes keen. Appearances? Brandon's lawyer rose smoothly. Your Honor, Petitioner Brandon Hart, requesting temporary guardianship of property decisions related to the late Howard Hart's estate. Our concern, risk of waste, disorganized ownership, and respondents' erratic conduct. My attorney stood. Your Honor, the claims fail under the standard of clear and convincing evidence. MS. Hart has maintained detailed records, proposed a least restrictive alternative, neutral fiduciary and household protocol, and has support from financial and medical witnesses. A guardianship is unnecessary and excessive. The judge turned to me. Ms. Hart, do you understand these proceedings? Yes, Your Honor, I said, voice steady. My stepson fears collapse. I fear it too. That's why I built structure without siege. I asked the court to preserve my life estate while we clarify the deed. The judge's pen tapped twice. Proceed with witnesses. The credit union manager testified first. 2 withdrawals, late November. In person. Stated purpose, household accessibility improvements. Account remains stable. No irregularities flagged. Rowe nodded. It wasn't dramatic testimony, but it mattered. Exhibit D stood firmer now. The pharmacist came next. His tie had tiny owls on it, and he spoke with careful precision. December 22nd, refill picked up by someone other than the patient. Hospice context. We documented with a counseling addendum. We wanted clarity, so it's in the log. Then Mrs. Alvarez. She walked slowly to the stand, shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Her voice was thin but firm. I saw a young woman, not Miss Hart, carry a box labeled Trust Docs inside. Mr. Hart looked tired. Miss Hart kept a notebook. She read to me from it. It was clear, not confused. Finally, the APS worker. We received intake from Ms. Hart. Conducted home visit. No immediate safety risk. Closure letter issued, no services required. The judge listened without visible reaction, but I noticed her pen underline closure letter. Cross-examination turned the air sharp. Brandon's lawyer pressed Mrs. Alvarez. You're not a doctor, are you? You can't clinically judge Ms. Hart's mental state. No, she admitted. But I can read. Her notes were organized. People confused don't keep dates so clean. He pushed the pharmacist. Isn't third-party pickup common? Yes, the pharmacist conceded. But not usually during hospice and not without authorization. That's why I logged it. The lawyer tried to sow doubt, but every answer landed like small nails in wood. Then Brandon took the stand. He looked taller than usual, chest puffed with nerves. Dad depended on me, he began. When he forgot words, he looked at me like I was the only adult left. I couldn't let things unravel. I didn't mean to lock her out. I just didn't know what else to do. His voice cracked on the last line. Kaylee dabbed her eye with a tissue. The courtroom hushed. For a moment, he was an adversary, but son, a boy who'd watched his father fade. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Hart, fear does not equal incapacity. Guardianship requires clear and convincing proof. So far, I see fear, not proof. Brandon's lawyer shuffled his papers, but the judge lifted a hand. We'll recess until Monday for closing statements. In the meantime, no locks changed, no exclusive control granted. The court will decide. Her gavel tapped once, crisp as glass. Outside, snow fell in heavy curtains. Brandon approached me under the courthouse awning. His eyes were rimmed red, his voice low. This isn't what I wanted, he said. I thought making it official would feel safe. But it feels worse. Because safety without trust is just a cage, I replied. He nodded, almost, then pulled his coat tighter and walked into the snow. That evening at Dot's condo, I opened the ledger and wrote, Friday hearing, witnesses steady, judge unconvinced, Monday final. I added another line, fear is paper too. It folds. It tears. It can be rewritten. Dot squeezed my hand. You've already won more than most. You've built rails where others only drown. Saturday morning arrived with a brittle light, the kind that makes snow sparkle deceptively cheerful. I sat at Dot's kitchen table, ledger open, exhibits spread like playing cards. My pen hovered over the page but wouldn't move. Grief makes time thick. I still expected Howard's footsteps, his gentle throat clear before pouring coffee. Instead, silence hummed, punctuated only by Dot rinsing mugs at the sink. Roe called at 9 sharp. His voice was brisk. We did well Friday. But Monday is closings. I want a capacity statement from Howard's oncologist. If we can show his condition mid-December, the quitclaim deed looks shaky. I left a message yesterday. Follow up. Doctors are slow. Paper moves faster than grief. I scribbled task, capacity letter in the margin. By noon the oncologist's nurse faxed a 1-paragraph note. Patient demonstrated cognitive deficits consistent with advanced illness. Unlikely to have understood legal documents mid-December. I slid it into Exhibit H, notary/trust. The weight of that single paragraph was heavier than 10 pages of Brandon's petition. Dot peeked over my shoulder. Howard would hate to be reduced to a fax. He hated hospitals too, I said softly. But sometimes dignity rides on paper. That afternoon I walked to Mrs. Alvarez's house to thank her again for agreeing to testify. She invited me in, her kitchen fragrant with cumin and simmering beans. You looked steady up there, she said. Like a librarian telling a noisy class to hush. I felt more like the book about to be torn in half. She shook her head. You carry notes. Notes are stronger than nerves. She slid a small envelope across the table. I found these photos from December. I keep my camera handy for the birds. But I snapped the Hart driveway when the snowplow came. You can see boxes being carried inside. I opened the envelope. Grainy images, but clear enough. Kaylee with a box, trust docs scrawled across it. Brandon behind her, face tight. Would you sign a statement? I asked. She nodded. Already typed it. She handed me a single page, neat cursive at the bottom. I logged it under Exhibit E, timeline notes, photos from Alvarez. Sunday morning, I sat with Roe in his office again. He studied the photos, the nurse's fax. Good, he said. This strengthens H and E. The judge will see. This isn't paranoia, it's documentation. He leaned back. One more thing. Judges like order. Prepare your own closing statement. Simple. Speak like you would to Howard's students. Explain why you chose structure, not siege. I nodded, though my stomach clenched. That afternoon, Brandon called. His name flashing on my phone startled me more than the ring. I hesitated, then answered. His voice was low, almost ashamed. Lillian, I didn't know you'd bring witnesses. Mrs. Alvarez? The pharmacist? This is humiliating. It's not humiliation, I said calmly. It's fact. I wanted control, not a circus, he muttered. You wanted safety. But you wrapped it in locks. Silence stretched. Then he whispered, Dad told me once, make sure Lillian doesn't drown in decisions. I thought that meant, take them away from you. Maybe I heard wrong. You heard fear, not words. My throat tightened. Howard trusted me. He trusted you too. But trust doesn't mean erasure. He hung up without goodbye. I logged the call. Exhibit A, Brandon admission, misinterpreted father's request. Sunday evening, snow turned heavy again. Dot made stew while I rehearsed my closing statement aloud. Paper isn't only paper, I said, pacing. It's my life. My proposal is the least restrictive alternative. I don't resist order, I offer it. Dot clapped once. Strong. But at Howard's voice. Judges listen to the dead when the living speak them true. So I added, my husband once said, make sure they don't drown you in decisions. I listened. I built rails instead of walls. I asked this court to honor that trust. Monday dawned with bitter wind. The courthouse steps were slick with salt, and I gripped the rail as though the whole case balanced on my boots. Inside, the courtroom was crowded, more people than Friday. Curious faces, some strangers, some neighbors. Brandon sat with Kaylee, both tense. He avoided my eyes. Row opened firmly. This case is about dignity. Ms. Hart offers order, not resistance. Petitioner offers fear, not proof. The law requires clear and convincing evidence. It isn't here. Brandon's lawyer countered. Indicators of risk, disputes, third-party pickups, neighbor testimony, point to confusion. Guardianship safeguards the property until matters settle. The judge raised a hand. Why reject a fiduciary? That is the least restrictive alternative. Brandon shifted in his seat. Because strangers don't care. They don't love Dad. The judge's gaze was cool. Sometimes strangers protect better than family. Roe called the oncologist's nurse. She read the facts into the record. Howard's cognitive deficits, unlikely to understand legal documents mid-December. Brandon's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled. Capacity statements are admissible. Then came the photographs from Mrs. Alvarez. The lawyer tried to dismiss them as grainy neighbor shots. But Alvarez herself testified calmly, I know what I saw. They carried boxes marked, Trust Docs the week Howard entered hospice. The photos were entered as part of Exhibit E. Finally, the judge asked me to speak. My knees trembled, but my voice held. I kept a ledger not to fight, but to survive grief. I logged calls, letters, receipts. I proposed a neutral fiduciary, a protocol with clear rails. That's structure, not chaos. Guardianship strips rights when less will do. The least restrictive alternative is enough. I took a breath. My husband once told me, make sure they don't drown you in decisions. I honored that. I built bridges from paper. Paper isn't only paper, it is my life. The courtroom was silent. Even Brandon's lawyer set down his pen. Brandon rose suddenly, against his counsel's advice. His voice was strained. I just wanted safety. I didn't want her erased. I misheard Dad. I thought taking control was love. Maybe it was fear. Kaylee touched his sleeve, eyes wet. For the first time, she looked at me not as rival but as fellow mourner. The judge's pen tapped twice. This court recognizes fear, but fear does not meet the standard. I will deliberate. Decision to be issued this week. Her gavel fell, and the room exhaled. Outside, reporters loitered in the cold. One shouted, Ms. Hart, how do you feel? I ignored them. My answer wasn't ready. Brandon lingered near the steps. If the judge sides with you, will you let me help? Without the title. Just a son. I met his eyes. Help doesn't need a deed. It needs respect. He nodded once, then walked away into the swirling snow. That night, back at Dots, I laid out all exhibits. A call logs, fiduciary refusal, Brandon's admission. B. Certified mail, deed copy. C. Fiduciary proposal. D. Credit union note. E. Timeline notes, Alvarez photos, code notice. F. APS intake, closure letter. G. Pharmacy addendum. H. Notary record, oncologist's capacity statement. I. Boundaries protocol. The binder was thick now, heavy in my lap. I closed it gently as if Howard's hand rested on top. Saturday bled into Sunday with no rest. At Dot's kitchen table, my ledger lay open, its grid of exhibits A through I staring back at me like ribs in a chest. Every line was a defense, every entry a memory. I should have slept, but sleep meant surrender. Instead, I sharpened pencils, restapled packets, flipped through witness statements as if repetition could turn them into prayers. Dot bustled with casseroles, muttering that food steadied nerves. She never said the word fear, but she pressed soup into my hands as though broth could armor my heart. Brandon's petition sat on the counter. Each time I passed it, the words burned: incapacity, confusion, risk of waste. His signature glared at me in ink so firm it felt like an accusation. Roe called Saturday morning. His tone was clipped. We need a capacity statement from Howard's oncologist. That deed signed in mid-December is our weak point. I swallowed. He mistook a fork for a pen that week. He thought the TV remote was the phone. Get it in writing. Paper outweighs memory. By Sunday noon, the nurse faxed a one-paragraph statement. Patient demonstrated cognitive deficits consistent with advanced illness. unlikely to have understood legal documents mid-December. I slid it under Exhibit H, notary/trust capacity reference. The single page felt heavier than Brandon's whole petition. That evening, Dot insisted we watch the weather report. The anchor droned about lake-effect snow, about roads slick with ice. Dot lowered the volume. He'll still be your son, no matter what the judge says. He'll be a son who tried to put me in a cage, I said flatly. She sighed. Grief makes people cruel. But grief also ends. Paper stays. I wrote in the ledger. Reminder, grief is storm, paper is bridge. Sunday night, the phone rang. Brandon's name glowed on the screen. My hand shook before I answered. His voice was raw. Why are you dragging neighbors into this? Mrs. Alvarez? The pharmacist? It feels like betrayal. It isn't betrayal to ask for witnesses, I said. It's protection. I just wanted safety, he muttered. Dad told me once, make sure Lillian doesn't drown. I thought that meant, take decisions away from you. Maybe I heard wrong. You heard fear, not his words. He trusted me. He trusted you. But trust doesn't mean erasure. He hung up. I logged the call. Exhibit A, Brandon admission, misinterpreted father's words. Monday dawned steel cold. I dressed slowly. Navy wool skirt, white blouse, brooch Howard once pinned on me before a library fundraiser. My boots gripped the salted courthouse steps. Reporters clustered, microphones thrust forward. Miss Hart, are you afraid of losing your home? Do you think family should ever serve as trustees? I said, only the ledger will answer. Inside, the courtroom buzzed like a hive. Brandon sat with Kaylee, their lawyer whispering. His shoulders hunched, his eyes darted. Kaylee's lips pressed white. The judge entered, her presence cutting the air clean. Roe stood. His voice was steady as stone. Your Honor, this case is not about rejecting order. It is about preserving dignity. Ms. Hart has documented every step, exhibits a through-eye show structure, not chaos. She has proposed the least restrictive alternative, a neutral fiduciary, a boundaries protocol. Guardianship is a deprivation of rights. The standard is clear and convincing evidence. That burden is unmet. Brandon's lawyer rose. Indicators of risk remain. Conflicted deeds, disputes with heirs, third-party pickups. Guardianship provides temporary safety. The judge's gaze cut him short. Fear is not proof. Continue. The judge asked clarifications. Credit union manager, withdrawals were ordinary, in-person, stated for accessibility improvements. Pharmacist, December 22nd refill picked up by caregiver. Logged with counseling addendum. Mrs. Alvarez, I saw Kaylee carry boxes labeled Trust Docs. Ms. Hart read her notes aloud, organized, steady. APS worker, home visit completed. No immediate risk. Closure letter issued, no services required. Each voice layered another plank of the bridge. The judge turned to me. MS. Hart, speak if you wish. I stood, binder in hand. My voice carried across the room. I kept the ledger not to fight, but to survive grief. I built rails because floods drown widows who walk without them. My proposal for a fiduciary is structure, not resistance. Guardianship is siege. I chose bridges. I swallowed hard. My husband said, make sure they don't drown you in decisions. I listened. Paper is not only paper. It is my life. The room fell silent, even Brandon's lawyer lowering his pen. Brandon rose suddenly. His voice cracked. I just wanted safety. When Dad looked at me, forgetting words, I felt like the only adult left. I thought locks meant love. I see now they meant walls. Kaylee's mascara streaked her cheeks. She whispered, we thought control was care. The judge's tone softened, but her words were firm. Fear is human. But fear is not incapacity. Guardianship requires clear and convincing evidence. That standard has not been met. The judge lifted a single sheet, voice deliberate. Petition for temporary guardianship is denied. Respondents' life estate rights are preserved. Boundaries protocol stands. A neutral independent fiduciary may manage receipts, calendars, and keys during estate clarification. APS closure is confirmed. No further guardianship petitions absent new evidence. The gavel struck once, echoing like thunder turned final. Gasps rippled. Dot gripped my hand. My knees buckled, but relief steadied me. Reporters pressed forward. Miss Hart, how do you feel? Protected by rails, not cages. Brandon lingered near the doors. His eyes were red. If the judge sided with you, will you let me help? Not as trustee. Just as son. Help doesn't need a deed. It needs respect. He nodded. Kaylee whispered, I'm sorry. Her voice broke like a branch in frost. That evening, the fiduciary entered the keypad code. The light blinked green. He handed me a brass key. This is yours, Miss Hart. I stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and pine cleaner. The hallway light flickered once, steadying. Room by room, I walked. Living room, kitchen, bedroom. Each object hummed with memory. The dented kettle, the quilt, Howard's glasses case still on the nightstand. In the study, I ran my hand over his old library stamps, the ink pads dry but waiting. I whispered, we stamped order once. We stamped it again. At the kitchen table, I opened the ledger's final page. I wrote in steady hand, Exhibit I, Boundaries Protocol accepted. Fiduciary appointed. Life estate preserved. Guardianship denied. APS closure confirmed. Order entered. I closed the ledger, its cover scarred with fingerprints and T-rings. It was not just record, it was bridge. Howard's voice echoed, make sure they don't drown you in decisions. I whispered back, I built rails. I built a bridge. Snow drifted past the window. The house breathed again, mine not only by law, but by dignity restored.